So precisely halfway between his arrival at Walden Pond and his departure from Walden Pond, 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days later, Thoreau visits the Maine woods and climbs Mount Katahdin.
About Thoreau, well, this area that we are living here inspired David Thoreau in the direction of spirituality. And this is what happened to me when I came here, when I first encountered transcendental meditation. It happened to be in Maine, and it happened to be in a department that is very supportive of the work that I am doing with healers and mystics and so on. So maybe it's in the air of the land and in the environment.
And it's interesting to see what he has to say. He actually has quite a long passage about it. But what I'd like to do is just read what I regard as the most critical component of this long passage. Among Thoreau scholars, it's fairly well known as the contact passage, and you'll see why in a moment. Here's, again, he's at what he believes is the top of Mount Katahdin, and he's explaining later to his readers what the significance of that was. I stand in awe of my body. This matter to which I am bound has become so strange to me. I fear not spirits, ghosts, of which I am one. That my body might, but I fear bodies. I tremble to meet them. What is this Titan that has possession of me? Talk of mysteries, think of our life and nature, daily to be shown matter, to come in contact with it. Rock, trees, wind on our cheeks, the solid earth, the actual world, the common sense, contact, who are we? Where are we?
If one just feels and listens to what is happening around you, you become one with the mountain in a sense that you're part of a living entity. So there's like a heartbeat. There's a connection there, a real connection on the spiritual sense. And for me, it touches my soul because of the beauty that I see around me. What Katahdin portrays, you can hear it in the voice of the wind crying across Knife's Edge, blowing up above the mountain. You can hear it in the crashing of the thunder as it comes down and hits the land. You can see it in the clouds, the way the clouds come over Katahdin and engulfs it. People have climbed that mountain for many, 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 many years, and they go back. And if you stop and listen to the sounds that the mountain is and what the vibration of the mountain, what it's giving off, you feel that. And I don't know, maybe I just have a much more connectedness to that land, to the mountain in that sense. But the rocks speak, the trees speak, everything speaks. It has spirit, it's alive. But you have to sense it and be able to feel that, become one with the mountain, one with nature, more or less. But nature is all around us, so the mountains speak for itself.
And it draws people there. It draws people that comes there who are non-Indians, and they don't know the reason why they are drawn there. But they are drawn there because of the spirit of the mountain. Katahdin lives, it breathes, and it can tell you stories.
One of the more, I think it's fairly famous, this whole notion that Thoreau had that heaven is under your feet as well as over your heads, I think is a really critical insight, and it's a wonderful way to put it.
Because through this kind of spiritual understanding, we'll come to terms with the earth. And this is what Native Americans can teach to modern Americans, that if we want to survive in the long run, we have to reestablish a loving relationship to the earth.
Traditionally, of course, heaven has been somewhere else. And what Thoreau, I think, was very, very interested in grounding heaven in this reality, that heaven is available and accessible to people now.
A lot of people live in two realities. One reality is the reality of their everyday world, and the other reality is a more inner reality that they are afraid to articulate because our culture has shut its doors to inner realities. And we need to open them up and incorporate this understanding not only among ordinary people, but within the academic environment.
One of the more important things I think that Thoreau has to offer us nowadays is this insight into the miraculousness of this reality, that we can, from one perspective, it's just commonplace, but from another perspective, it's not commonplace at all. It's what Carlos Castaneda called separate reality, a reality that is imbued with everything that all of the human traditions have called sacred, as opposed to the more mundane, not necessarily profane, but mundane reality, the one, the workaday world, the world of getting and spending.
And because science cannot study anything over and beyond his realm, some scientists assume that there is no world beyond that. And therefore, if you come up with this conclusion, then automatically we arrive at nihilism. It's a very nihilistic philosophy that can lead people to self-destruction. So we need a spiritual understanding of our place in the universe if we are to survive as a species.
Thoreau, in his tradition and his practice, took very seriously. He wanted to operate in the world, but he also did it with an eye, you might say, on the next world, on what he called the higher world. And of course, that's what artists do, is they make metaphors to try to communicate this fundamental insight that there is this separate sphere that's important. And I think that's what Thoreau, as an artist, was attempting to do. He was using the prophetic tradition to do that. He was adding to the prophetic tradition to do that. He was looking to Native American cultures and other cultures around the world, but particularly seemed to be interested in Native American cultures, to leverage the strengths and the insights of those cultures to improve upon this experimental new American culture that emerged in the New World. He wanted, as he said, to keep the New World new, and to do that he wasn't being necessarily revolutionary, although I think it's fundamentally revolutionary, but he was drawing on existing or pre-existing cultures and insights, the Judeo-Christian cultures and insights, the Native American cultures and insights, taking those and bringing them together in a dynamic mix that worked for him and that he appears to have thought would work for the rest of the country.
And we can learn a great deal from the way that the Indian has lived here in our land, their respect for nature, their use of the land, their belief that we are all part of the Great Spirit, that the Great Spirit created the world for our use, but also for us to live in harmony with the world around us.
Using this imagery, so to speak, God created human beings to be mirrors. Because then what does it mean to say divine image? Divine image means God created us as mirrors in which God wanted to see itself reflected. So the process of submission to God, the process of becoming a spiritually evolved human being, involves improving and perfecting our mirror quality. And therefore in Sufism you'll find things of removing the rust on your heart, because in traditional times mirrors were made out of metal, which was then polished, in which you'd see the reflection. And based upon the perfection of the mirror, you have bad mirrors where your nose gets out of shape, and it distorts you. So you want a mirror which is as transparent as possible. And therefore the ideal human being from this Sufi Islamic point of view is a human being who is as transparent as possible to the divine presence.
The prodigal son left the palace to experience the world, and he got all messed up. He lived with the pigs, and at a certain point there is exhaustion with that kind of lifestyle. And then the inner self begins to come forward and he says, hey, wait a minute now, I am a prince and I should be in the palace. That's when the individual begins to look inward in search of that higher reality, the heavenly palace that every human being is headed towards.